How's it going, everyone? Now, I'd like to take this time before the video starts to thank everyone for all the support that the channel has gotten over the past month. Now, so far we've gained over 20,000 subscribers, and that's freaking crazy. Now, I can't even begin to thank you guys enough for all the support that you guys have given us. Over 28,000 of you guys, and growing. Just continue to support this channel and keep coming back to watch our videos every single day. So, I just wanted to point out that me and Cookie really appreciate every ounce of support that you guys give us, and it helps us out tremendously. And with that said, a lot of you guys loved my How to Master Palpatine guide, and you guys really wanted me to make more of these guides for other heroes. So if you haven't seen my Palpatine video, I highly recommend that you check it out as well. Click that little eye in the top right corner if you guys want to check that out. And in the comment section of that Palpatine video, Boba Fett was easily the most requested hero for me to cover next, so that's what we're going to be discussing today. Now, I know that there's some other channels that give their tips and tricks and their how-tos and whatnot for how to improve your skills with a certain hero, but they don't point out really how to improve those skills and what star cards to go into, and they just sort of tell you what the hero does. I mean, anyone that plays the game can figure out what the hero does, so I like to go into a bit more detail than other channels, so hopefully you guys enjoy this, and by the end of this video, I guarantee each and every one of you will be a master level bounty hunter.
Master
Swanee, I suck with Boba Fett.
what are we going to do?
Now don't worry, young Padawans, I'll show you exactly what you need to know to master your skills as one of the galaxy's most feared bounty hunters. So let's get into the basics. Boba Fett only has 500 health points, which is the lowest out of all the heroes, even including Iden Sukio. But this is due to the fact that if used properly, he is one of the hardest targets to hit. Now, he doesn't have the speed compared to someone like Darth Maul or Luke, but he has crazy agility with his jetpack. Boba Fett's jetpack, paired with his wrist rockets, is what really makes Boba such a deadly foe out on the battlefront. Now, Boba Fett did receive a nerf in the last patch, thus taking him from the best hero in the entire game to just okay. Now, that doesn't mean you can't get crazy kills with him, but his wrist rockets used to be able to just instantly kill groups of heroes at once, which admittedly was a bit OP. So, it was a much needed nerf. Now, in that patch, they reduced the rate of fire of his rockets and the number of rockets fired by 1, and they also changed the way that his jetpack ability works now. Now, you need to be extra careful with Boba due to his low health. If you run into a Wookiee warrior or a vanguard with a shotgun, then you'll probably die in about 2 shots. If you happen to run into a heavy with a supercharged sentry, then it will instantly knock you out of the sky and stun lock you. So if you see a Wookiee, or more importantly a heavy, it's best to either take them out as quickly as possible or to just turn and run away. Alright, so let's get into tip number 1, which is how to use Boba's jetpack. Now, since the patch, Boba's jetpack is linked to his For the Hunt ability, which is also his radar scan. That means that while the radar scan is active, your jetpack icon turns yellow and will have unlimited fuel for as long as the radar ping ability is active. So that means for the most effective way to use Boba is to use his radar ability, not so much for the radar itself, but mainly for his jetpack. To master Boba Fett, you're going to need to get used to multitasking. You need to constantly keep an eye out at the level of fuel for his jetpack. If you see it's getting low, then activate the For the Hunt ability for some emergency backup fuel. My number 1 rule of thumb with Boba Fett is to always make sure you have reserve fuel if you're running around on the ground. Since Boba has little to no health, you need to be able to make a quick escape at any given moment. Now, his For the Hunt ability is a double-edged sword. When you activate it, it freezes the current level of fuel remaining in his jetpack. This is great to use if you have a full tank, but be careful when you're getting too low on fuel. If you use the For the Hunt ability when you have no fuel, it will freeze your tank at empty, thus trapping you on the ground and making you an easy target. Which brings us into tip number 2. Never use the melee. Now, in the last Battlefront game, Boba Fett had a flamethrower, and it was pretty useful in the right situations. In this game, it's more like a flame punch and isn't really worth it. Since Boba has little health, never go out of your way to try to use the melee on someone. You should only use the melee if literally all of your abilities are drained and you're stuck in a 1v1 situation and it's sort of a last resort. It's always smarter to just turn and run away and never get up that close and personal unless you absolutely have to. Alright, so tip number 3 is to never take on a group of people unless you have your rockets fully charged. It's always a good idea to avoid going into the battle unless you have your rockets. Think of it as the same way as you do your health. It's not smart to go charging into the fight while your health is still low and it's recharging. So you need to treat your rockets the same way. Boba's blaster isn't as good as it was in the last game. Its rate of fire is a lot slower and it's a bit less accurate. So Boba's main damage dealer is his rockets. The rate of fire on his blaster just isn't fast enough to take on multiple people at the same time. So make sure to always have those wrist rockets and never waste them on just one person. Okay, so tip number 4 is to try to use the concussion rockets in tangent with your other abilities. Now, a lot of people don't think that the concussion rocket's that good, but in reality, it pairs greatly with your wrist rockets and your blaster. Now, it's sad, but a lot of people actually think that the concussion rockets actually do damage like the regular wrist rockets, but they don't. All that the concussion rockets do is stun enemies, and it makes it harder for them to move and makes their screen a little bit blurry. Depending on your star cards, it can even disable their weapons temporarily. If an enemy is slowed and stunned by the concussion rocket first, then they won't be able to escape your rocket barrage followed shortly after. Now, the concussion rocket is also a really great tool in Heroes vs. Villains because it can stun lock your enemy, and then your teammates can swoop in and get the easy kill. Now, tip number 5 is something that can apply to most of the heroes. If you watched my Palpatine video, then you probably remember that I told you to always stay on the move and to dash everywhere. Well, the same applies to Boba and his dash ability. Anytime you aren't in the air, make sure you're dashing everywhere you go. On Xbox, it's the B button, PlayStation, it's circle, and PC, it's the Alt key. Dashing is a great way to travel the map, get to the objective quicker, it's a good way to make quick retreats, and most importantly, it's a good way to avoid being shot. Tip number 6 isn't really a tip at all. It's more of, Dice, if you are watching this, then please fix Boba Fett's jetpack. Boba's jetpack tends to lock up. There is a glitch going on in the game where if you are playing as Boba Fett, his jetpack will just turn off for no reason at all. I originally thought that if he was shot, it would just turn off his jetpack and it would break, because I thought that was realistic, but in reality, it just is a glitch and breaks, because I was on Kashyyyk, I spawned in as Boba Fett, I ran maybe 50 feet, and it just turned off for no reason. It wouldn't work anymore. So yeah, tip number 6 is just, Dice, if you see this, please patch this in the next patch. It's kind of annoying when I'm on like a 70 kill streak and then my jetpack just quits working for no reason at all. Okay, so tip number 7 is pretty short and sweet. When you're playing heroes versus villains, use your jetpack to get into high, hard to reach places. Saber heroes can't reach you if you're high off the ground on top of a building. Alright, so number 8 has to do with the jetpack again. It's pretty simple. Never stay level when flying. If you're in the same spot for too long while in the air, then it's easier to hit you. So try to fly in a random pattern so that the enemy players have a harder time getting you in their sights. Fly up, fly down, fly left, fly right, fly diagonal, fly everywhere. Just try your best to avoid hovering in the same spot for too long. It's going to take a bit of practice flying around like this while you're trying to aim, so I highly recommend that you go into arcade and try it out before you go into multiplayer. Okay, so it's time for the part that everybody's been waiting for, and that is the star cards. Okay, so we're going to discuss which ones I've chosen and why, and then I'll tell you which ones are good for like Heroes vs. Villains and Galactic Assault. Now, originally, before the patch, I went with these 3, obviously because they're purple. I went with fuel efficiency because Boba's jetpack fuel burns slower when flying, and that actually worked out pretty well with his old, like the old setup that he had before the patch. But now, in Galactic Assault, and sometimes in Heroes vs. Villains, I go with this extended exposure because his radar, his for the hunt ability, for the hunt, when it's active, you get fuel longer for a longer period of time. So this adds more time to that for the hunt ability. So if you upgrade it, like right now, I just have it green, so it's 3 seconds. If you upgrade that all the way to 6, then that's an extra 6 seconds that you'll get of unlimited fuel. So the current setup that they have for him, that just completely makes this one obsolete, in my opinion, because this one makes it burn slower, but this one gives me an additional 6 seconds of unlimited fuel. So I'm going to work on upgrading this one now, and I highly recommend that you go with this card if you're going to use him in Galactic Assault, because, I mean, those 6 seconds of extra fuel are going to make a huge difference. Okay, so this one, Intense Barrage. This is a guaranteed must-have for any Boba Fett build. Like, if you do not have this card, his rockets just suck. Like, his rocket ability is just really bad without this. Now, before the patch, this upgrade made him a beast. Like, he would just melt through heroes with ease, and it took no problem at all. I mean, after the patch, it's not as good. It's still good, don't get me wrong. It's just not as good as what it used to be. Now, this is a must-have. It is good for Heroes vs. Villains, and it's good for Galactic Assault, because, I mean, you get 4 additional rockets. That's a lot of firepower. I mean, Rocket Barrage fires faster, increasing the total number of rockets fired. So you get a faster rate of fire for your rockets, and you get more rockets. Now, and then without this card, it shoots like a rocket every second. I think it shoots like 4 rockets or something like that without this card. I don't know. It's been so long since I've not used it, but yeah, definitely go with this card no matter what. This is a must-have. And then I also like to, in Galactic Assault, I like to go with this one because Boba Fett takes less damage when using his rocket barrage while flying with his jetpack. 90% of the time, if I am using my rocket barrage, then there's a group of enemies that I'm trying to kill at once. Like, I don't use my rocket barrage for one person unless it's like a hero or I know that I'm not going to be seeing other enemies for a while. So, if I see a group of enemies and I'm firing at a group of enemies, then odds are they're shooting back at me because there's probably like 3 or 4 of them. And if I'm shooting my rockets at 3 or 4 people at once, I want to take less damage because if there's 4 people shooting at me, I'm going to take a lot of damage all at once. So I like to go with that 15% reduced damage while I am firing my rockets. I think it's a pretty good combination. Now let's discuss some of these other cards. Now this information sharing, I don't think this card is, I will never choose this card ever. Because for the hunt reveals enemies to your allies for a part of its duration. Unless you really like playing the objective and want to help your buddies, there's no reason to go for this. Actually, there's no reason to go for this at all because there's no incentive to win. So say you do help your buddies and you guys win the match and you play the objective and you win. Like, there's no point in winning or losing because you get the same points regardless. It just goes to whoever the MVP is gets the most points and the way that they have it set up. So there's not really any point in using this because if you help your team and you win the match, like, you don't get anything extra. Like, if there was a win bonus, I could maybe understand using this because you want to get the win and you want to get more credits, but it's not set up that way. So I personally will never use this card ever. And then we have Acute Concussion, which Concussion Rocket will concuss enemies for a longer duration. This I don't think is worth it because the max that you can upgrade it is only 2 seconds. 2 seconds is not that much. Like, if it went up to 5, I think 5 would be worth it, but since it's only 2 seconds, I'm just going to avoid this card. Because, having them concussed for a while is pretty great because, they can't see you, their screen's all blurry, and they move slowly. But I don't think 2 seconds is worth upgrading it to the highest level because the upgrade parts are just too hard to come by, and I just wouldn't waste them on this. Then we have the Blaster Disabler. Now this one is pretty interesting as well, but it also has the same downside as this one. Now, turning off their blasters is nice. Now I personally have never used this card, so I don't know how it works. If it works like Disruption, and it like disables their weapons and they have to reheat them, then that might be pretty good. But it just says disable duration half a second all the way up to a second and a half. So you hit them with the concussion rocket, and then their weapons are disabled and they can't shoot their gun for 1.5 seconds. Now, if it works the same way as Disruption and it goes 1.5 seconds and then they have to do the reload animation, then that might be worth it. But if their guns are just disabled for a second and a half and then they can just start shooting again instantly, then I don't know. Like, it might be worth tinkering with, and this might be a good substitute for something. Like, this might be a good heroes versus villains kind of card that I might pair with like the rockets. But as of right now, I'm just going to avoid this. Like, this might be something I upgrade down the road, but right now I'm not worried about it. Then we have Boba Fett's jetpack fuel refills faster when not being used. I tinkered around with this for a little bit, and it was pretty useful before the patch because I could just land, pop a few shots off on the ground, and then it would help get me more fuel. Now this might be a good combination with this one. Now what you could do if you want to be just a freaking jetpack monster and be in the sky all the time is you could combine these 3 actually. Your rockets would suck, but oh man, if you combine these 2 and then had 6 seconds extra fuel, you could just fly constantly. I don't know why you would do that, but that would be a pretty cool combo to pull off. Maybe a cool heroes versus villains build or something. And then we have this bad boy, the anti-hero rockets. Rocket Barrage deals bonus damage to enemy heroes. This is obviously a really good card for heroes versus villains. Now my heroes versus villains build is, I don't play too much heroes versus villains, but when I do, it's Death from Above, Intense Barrage, and anti-hero rockets. Now I could probably switch this one out since I there's not too many heroes that have blasters. Like, I mean, there's Finn and Leia and whatever, but this one I would switch out with probably something for fuel, or maybe one of these two. I think that if they're concussed a little bit longer, that might be a good one to replace with this one. So let's say acute concussion, intense barrage, and then anti-hero rockets. Now, before the patch, you didn't even need anti-hero rockets. You could just fire off a missile barrage with your rockets, and you could kill 3 or 4 heroes at once if they're grouped together, because it was insane. So before the patch, if you had anti-hero rockets fully maxed, combined with intense barrage, it would have, I couldn't imagine how OP that would have been. So, since his rockets have been nerfed, definitely heroes versus villains, I would go anti-hero rockets and intense barrage. Like that's a must. That's kind of obvious. But I would never go with anti-hero rockets and galactic assault because you need to focus more on the jetpack. But yeah, galactic assault, I use this one for my jetpack. I use this one to take less damage. I use this one to increase my rockets. And then heroes versus villains, I would go with intense barrage, one of these two to improve your concussion to help you and your teammates stun the enemies longer, and then anti-hero rockets. And that's basically going to do it for this video, guys. Hopefully these tips and tricks help you guys out. Hopefully you guys can master your skills as one of the galaxy's most feared bounty hunters. And if you guys like this video, you should give it a thumbs up because it really helps out the channel. If you guys want to check out another video, I have that Palpatine video that I mentioned earlier. And I have quite a few other videos. I have kill streaks, I have fully upgraded gameplay for almost every character now. We have podcasts, we have tons of stuff. If you want to help sponsor the channel, you can become a sponsor, and then you get special emotes and moderator status for our streams. We are going to try to be doing streams twice a week now. And that's going to do it for me, and I will talk to you guys in the next video. And that's going to do it for me, and I will talk to you guys in the next video.
I warn you not to underestimate my powers.
Do not throw away your potential.
Don't force me to kill you!